Want to attend the legendary Thrivetime Show Business Workshop for free? Subscribe on iTunes, leave an objective review, and send us confirmation at info@thrivetimeshow.com to claim your tickets. Want to live in a van down by the river? Come by and see us at our Riverwalk offices, and we'll be able to make your dreams come true.
Spectacular, Chuck. The people are cheering. They can now finally fulfill a lifelong dream to live in a van down by the river.
It's pristine real estate.
Now, for those people that were not at this past workshop, Chuck, the river at one point actually had water flowing in it, which is it's rare for the Arkansas River, but I was very impressed. The river was at least half full half the time.
It's like that the river likes to play little games like you're in elementary school with us.
Didn't it rain on? It rained on Saturday morning, right? Because
I believe so. Yeah.
I feel like Saturday was full, but Friday it was very sand duny.
Right. It's the best of both worlds, really.
They could shoot if they wanted to reenact the first scene from the first George Lucas Star Wars film. You know, where he goes back to that desert planet.
I don't know.
They could shoot that on the. Really?
Yeah.
You continue to say that you've never seen Star Wars, but yet I don't believe it.
I never have.
We have Jason on the show today. He is a manager for one of the Elephant in the Room locations in Broken Arrow. Jason, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic.
Now, have you seen the Star Wars movies?
All but the newest one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's impressive. There we go. So
better man than me. Better man than I.
I'm glad you said it. Okay, so now
you were thinking it.
We had a question that was asked from the Thrive Nation, and they wanted to know what are the 5 characteristics every business owner needs to be successful. And so we're going to go through the 4 E's, and the 4 E's they're not my creation. This is what Jack Welch has defined, the number one CEO of all time. He just says this is what he looks for when he hired people as the CEO of GE. This is what he looks for when he's partnering with people. Any business venture he's involved in, this is what he's looking for. These are the 5 characteristics that you need to become successful. And if you're listening to the show to make it very actionable and practical, I would encourage you to ask yourself which one of these 4 E's and then this final move, which one of these 5 attributes are you maybe weakest at? And give yourself a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, so the first E is energy. That's Jack Welch says you just have to bring energy to your job. If you're yawning all the time and always looking like everything's too tough to overcome, and it's just a mindset. But if you are lethargic at the workplace, that's not going to go over. Now, Chuck, you've seen this time and time again with clients we work with, and the ones who are successful bring a consistent level of proactivity and energy every single day. Explain how that works, my friend.
Well, if you can't motivate yourself, you're not going to be able to motivate anybody else. Right?
Repeat that.
If you can't motivate yourself, so if you can't bring your own amount of energy, nobody's going to want to be around you. If you're slow walking, dragging your feet all over the place, yawning all the time, nobody wants to work for somebody who is just low energy like that.
And you've created an unbelievable tip for yourself that you would like to share with the Thrivers, I think, about what time you have to go to bed in order for you to be energetic early.
Yeah.
What time are you going to bed now?
I've started to operate off the philosophy of whatever my daughter's bedtime in. I think that's pretty good bedtime for me as well. So 8:30
nice.
Every night possible.
So you're going to bed at 8 or 8:30?
If at all possible, yes.
Okay. Now, for Elephant in the Room there, Jason, you manage a team of people.
Yes, sir.
Speak to the people on the team that are energetic. I mean, describe what that looks like when you're cutting hair. If someone's working in the one of the grooming lounges for you, and you say, man, that person has good energy. What does that look like from your perspective?
So that's somebody who can not only go back and forth across the floor, but they have this like contagious optimism that they just bring. Everything that they have is full force energy. It doesn't seem like even if they are faking it, it's something that it riles people up. Their energy is contagious to people because it is just so overwhelming.
If you are in a situation where you are listening to the show today and you say, gosh, I am looking for high energy people. We have other trainings and other podcasts that will teach you how to do the group interview and how to find energetic people. But I'm just going to tell you this. If you are not energetic people are not going to want to work for you, period. It's not going to happen. So you've got to bring some passion to the workplace. Now, the second move, again, the question was, what are the 5 characteristics every business owner needs to be successful? The next is energize. You've got to energize other people. You've got to be the kind of person that can energize other people. If you hire somebody and you are not able to get them to play at to perform at 10% better than they would by default. If you hire somebody, if you're an owner of a business and you can't get people to perform at a level that's at least 10 to 20% higher than they would if they work somewhere else, then you, my friend, have a problem. You need to learn how to energize other people. Chup, it's nice. It's easy for me to say that, but you see me during the day do that with actual employees and team members.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I see it all the time. If you kind of strategize as a manager, right? You know what team members, they respond to what techniques. So maybe you make a point to walk over and give somebody a pat on the back, and that really lifts them up. Or maybe you got to get into somebody's butt that day to get them energized. But whatever that is, as a manager, you have to do that.
You've got to figure out everybody's love language if you want to energize them.
That's what I was looking
Some
for.
people need intensity. Some people need you to just listen to them and let them know you care. If they're running late, they want you to know that you actually care. Some people just say, man, they need to be pushed. They need to be really inspired and pushed hard.
Yeah.
Some people, you need to just micromanage the crap out of it. You're just on them. Every second of the day, you're just micromanaging them. Some people need a little space. They say, hey, you just tell me what to do and I'll knock it out.
Give me my to-do list. I'm on it. One of these things I wanted to say here was that when working with clients, what I have to tell them is that you have to be intentional about this as a manager. You can't just kind of float through the day and hope that you're hitting all those love languages. If you really want to have a team that's performing high for you and helping the company make money, you got to be intentional about how you interact with them. So you got to take time in your schedule and actually think about and strategize on how you're going to interact with each team member.
Now, the third E Jack Welch talks about is you must execute. You must actually get the job done.
That's overrated.
So I would say for Jason, you had elephant in the room. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys have to cut hair on time.
Correct.
You got to charge people when they're there. You got to make sure that the doors are locked when you leave. You got to keep it clean. You've got a lot of plates that you're juggling. And am I saying you're perfect? No. I mean, who is? But how have you learned or how have you gotten better at executing on a daily basis? Because once you know these leadership principles and these management concepts, it really does come down to getting it done. How have you gotten better at that over the last few months there?
Well, a really wise person in a boom hat once told me, the pen is for remembering, the brain is for thinking. And so ever since then, what I do is I game plan what I need to get done for that day, and I'll jot it down. And then I'll just go through line items. We have checklists that we use at Elephant every day, hourly, every 2 hours. And what we'll do is I'll knock those out. In that downtime, if we have nothing else, I'll try to be as efficient as possible and then knock out everything that I've written down for myself that I know I need to take care of that day.
Okay, so the pen is for remembering and the mind is for thinking. And I want to free somebody else out there. So I want to free you because there's somebody out there who's trying to memorize everything all the time because you were told in our school system that that's the best way.
Boo.
You're told you need to memorize because the school system really does put a bias on memorization. And they really, really do beat it into your head that memorization is the key to success when in fact, it is your biggest limiting factor.
Why do they do that? What's your take on that?
Why?
Yeah, why is that like let's memorize all these things and we're not going to teach you how to critically think?
You just asked a dangerous question. Okay. Well, school originally the public school system originally was designed to get a literacy up there. And I think they did a good job doing that. The literacy rate is obviously far higher than it used to be. People used to be completely illiterate. Also, they wanted to get basic mathematics. Very few people could do basic mathematics. And so that's why entire people groups could be enslaved back in the day or taken advantage of because, back in the day, no one could actually read the Bible or people couldn't read documents. So they didn't know what they didn't know. And so we got the literacy improved. Public schools did that. We really did improve the basic math. That was good. Mm-hmm. But you only really need to learn, in my opinion, 5 skills to be successful. And I'll fire them off here for you.
Okay.
And I talked a lot about this with people. Back in the day when I used to work at Junior Achievement, I told people this. There's 5 skills. And Chuck, maybe you can jot these on the show notes there.
Got it.
1, you must know how to read and process what you're learning. You need to read and process. You need to be able to understand what you're reading. So you need to be able to read and be able to process that information. The second thing is you have to have communication skills. You just have to learn how to communicate effectively in order to be successful. You really do. If you cannot read and you cannot communicate effectively, you're going to really, really struggle. I mean, you just have to.
Right.
The third is you've got to learn, you have to learn basic math. If you don't have math skills where you can add up 1 + 1 is 2 and 10 - 1 is 9, that kind of thing, you're just going to struggle. So you really have to get that nailed down.
Got to be able to budget.
Now, here's where it gets a little tough. The fourth is you need to learn how to be consistent. You need to learn diligence. And diligence, you could call it work ethic, but you need to learn to have a great work ethic, where you just outwork everybody. Everybody. That's what you do, right? And then the final skill that you need to learn to be successful in the game of life is you need to learn how to sell or influence people. You have to be able to influence people, and you have to learn how to sell. And you might say, well, how is that different from communication? Well, communication, when Jason's managing a team, you're not trying to sell your own team products or trying to convince them to buy anything, but you've got to convince them to buy into you. So communication, but learning to actually sell and get people to buy things, that's what you need to learn. Now, school, they've designed it where this is where it gets weird. This is where it gets a little offensive, Chup, and I apologize for anybody listening.
All right, I brought it up, so it's on me.
A lot of people want the school system now that, because all you need to learn is those things, so you don't need to learn like everything. You need to learn, those are the 5 things you need to learn. And so, again, you got to learn how to read and process what you're learning. You got to learn communication skills. You got to learn to do basic math. You got to learn to have a great work ethic, and you got to learn how to sell. But you don't really need to learn anything else. But the parents want someone to watch their kids. And so school has created a mindless list of stupid things that don't matter for you to do for 18 years. And so you need to, well, I guess it'd be, it'd be 14 years or 13 years.
Yeah.
But basically, they want you to have a mindless list of stupid things to do, so that way it takes longer. And the whole point about it taking longer is that it justifies parents no longer raising their kids, because the school can do it for you. So you can go to work all day, and the school can raise your kids for you. And that's actually part of the problem, and the reason why we have economies that are falling apart. If you look at inner cities where there's problems, it's the breakdown of the family. There's no parents home. And so, parents, there's very few people that are able to take care of their kids, and they want the school system to do it for them. And so you're seeing that. And so I would just ask you guys on the spot here, you went to high school. So think about your senior year of high school.
Yeah.
Think about your senior year of high school. Jason, where did you go to high school at?
Edison
High School?
Yes, sir.
Think about your senior year of high school. And I'm sorry you have to eat that microphone, but
Just
it's sort
get
of
on it.
So your senior year of high school. Chup, I'll start with you. What did you do your entire senior year of high school? Because I'm telling you, most of my high school was spent absolutely doing nothing, because I already had learned the things that the school was going to teach me. They did not teach me selling, and they weren't going to teach me selling. They hadn't taught me a work ethic, and they weren't going to. I did know basic math. I did have basic communication, and I did know how to read and process what I was learning. So there was a couple things like sales and work ethic they were never going to get to, but they needed to keep me in school for another 4 or 5 years. And so
It's pretty funny that you brought that up.
pretty much didn't learn anything my junior or senior year.
I know for a fact my schedule my senior year, I had out of 7 hours worth of classes, 2 were actual classes. The other ones I was like yearbook, so we drove to the town next door and ate lunch every day.
Right.
The other 2, I was teacher's aide for an elementary school teacher and a junior high teacher. I just went and hung out with my buddy and threw a football in the gym every single day for multiple hours. Literally 2 out of 7 classes. Then the last was like athletics. So we did nothing.
But a quick recap.
Art 4, and I'm a terrible artist.
But a quick recap is that you didn't go home, which is what the school wanted. They wanted you to be able to have daycare, full-time daycare. So you didn't put a burden on the family. You could be home and whenever the school day was done. But basically, school is raising people today.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the breakdown of the family, it's because parents aren't parenting, and schools won't give you moral advice, because the school's like, well, we're not here to set the morals, but who is? Because the parents aren't doing it.
Yeah.
And so now the schools have become almost like kind of like a nanny state, where they basically keep you occupied until you're 18. And that's what I've seen. But maybe Jason, you have a different take. But you went to Edison High School.
I did.
And your senior year, how was that? What did you do your senior year?
Let's see. I played a lot of marching snare.
Marching snare. Mm-hmm. So we'll count that as productive. We'll count that as a productive thing.
I would say outside of that, my AP English class was the only real class that I had. Talking about wasting time senior year, one of the ones that basically describes the babysitting process.
Right.
Was we had a class called Math of Finance, which was supposed to teach you how to manage a stock portfolio, teach you about how to invest, business smart, everything. The first 3 days, they showed us how to set up a Yahoo stock portfolio. And then after that, the teacher said, we're going to watch Dave Ramsey videos for the entire year until we run out. Then we're going to start those Dave Ramsey videos over again. You're not going to take notes. You're just going to sit here and watch these videos.
And that is what happened in my woodshop class in high school. That's what happened in my Spanish 2 class in my high school.
Hola.
That's what happened in my Spanish 1 class in high school. that happened in my geography class in high school, my American history class in high school, a social science class I had in high school. My communication teacher, Mr. Beckerman, was great. Mrs. Jansen was great. The other teachers, science class, biology, they mailed it in. All my math classes, except for one, they mailed it in. My gym class, you're required to take gym in Minnesota. You're required to have like a physical fitness class or some type of recreation class, and that was a joke. And basically, my entire high school was a complete joke.
You know what it sounds like?
What?
Most of those teachers needed a little bit more edge.
But they're not going to get any edge because they're not going to work for Jack Welch. They're going to work in a tenured environment where they can't be fired. So their little game is just to make sure that your GPA is high enough to show that they're a good teacher. So what they do is they make the test a little bit easier, and they just make sure that everyone gets a B, and then they look good. So it's actually a completely jacked up system. Woo! Okay, so edge now. Edge. This is the fourth E. Jack Welch says you have to have edge, which is the ability to make the tough call once you've gathered all the facts. The ability to make the tough call once you have gathered all the facts. Now, again, you shouldn't be making the tough call before you have all the facts. But once you do have all the facts, then you want to make the tough call. And a lot of people get that twisted. They get that wrong because what they do is they feel like, well, I need to make a decision now, but you don't know the facts. Or you have all the facts, but you won't make a decision because a decision might require irritating somebody. So the edge is the ability to make the tough call once you've gathered all the facts. You must act. So Jason, as a manager, thinking about your managing the team there, and what is probably the toughest aspect for you as it relates to edge with being a manager at an elephant in the room store? What's one of the toughest aspects of that?
I would say it would have to come to terminating an employee.
Why is that tough?
You want to not separate yourself emotionally, but you have to. Because, again, you have to have that edge. You have to be able to make that judgment call. But when it comes to terminating somebody, you also have to have your facts straight before you can do that. What
is your religious background? Like, what was your background?
I was raised in a predominantly Christian family.
So what's your view now? Are you do you have a certain religious view?
No, I would say probably highly agnostic.
Highly agnostic. Mm-hmm. Can you describe what that means for people out there who are listening that maybe don't know what that means?
Yeah, so somebody who's agnostic doesn't fully delve into the realm of atheist where you deny any type of theology, because I love the idea of theology. Every kind, they teach me something important every time I do research on them. So it's a little bit on the confused side, I'd say.
Okay, just sorting through it. And so here's the deal, and this is something maybe you could jot down that'd be good for you to know.
Yeah.
You have to get to a place in a life as a manager where you decide whether someone is a good worker or a bad worker, or a good employee or a bad employee. And you have to really, the company should help you define that. I should help you define that with better clarity. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're a bad employee. So as an example, whenever somebody is perpetually late, that will cause a customer to be upset.
Right.
Therefore, the customer always votes with their dollars. So universally, a universal, we'll call it law or principle for customers is customers don't like late service. They want prompt service. So you could be, if you're chronically late, you're just a bad employee. Doesn't mean a bad person, you know. You have to kind of go through that rule, that list of those things. What are those deal breakers? If someone's stealing, bad employee. What happens is, if you haven't gone through that filter in your mind of what makes somebody a bad employee, then when it happens, the positive attributes of their personality will make it almost impossible to fire people. And so, Eric Chupp, you used to manage a team of construction people.
Yeah. And
can you explain what happens when because when you're in the heat of the moment and it's time to fire somebody, and you're out there confusing them as a good person, you're weaving in character attributes of them as a person versus employee-related attributes, and you weave those two together, you might say stuff like, well, they're a good person, so I can't fire them. Or they're a good parent, or they're a good mom.
So that's an equation. They're a good person, so I can't fire them, equals they're going to continue to screw you. And that's what happens every single time. I remember having guys that worked for my dad for 17 years, 14 years, and then I've said this on the show before, but they call in sick because they can't come to a pour on a Saturday morning because they're sick, but they have the work truck. And then on the way home from the pour, I see them filling up their boat with the company card behind the work truck.
Right.
when you were supposed to be sick at home. And I went and did your job that day.
And here's what I'll find.
But he's a good guy.
But here's what I'll discover. People that have a bad work ethic usually tend to have bad morality behind it too. So it's usually, but I would just encourage you as a manager, you kind of make a list of things where you're like, okay, that right there is over the line. And then it's easier to deal with it once you've already resolved in your mind what the moral limit is.
Yeah.
And so there's all different like things that irritate me. Like we had a deal a couple months ago. We had a guy on our team who was like, man, I'll get that done by Monday. He kept saying that. And every Monday it wasn't done by Monday. And I don't hate the guy, but it let me know like, okay, in terms of business, this is not a dependable person. And I probably need to move them out of a position, which is what I did, where they're going to make a big impact because they're in an impact position and every week they keep impacting us negatively. But it took me way too long, like probably 5 or 6 years to get to that level of clarity. And again, because I am a Judeo-Christian, your work ethic in that particular book, the Bible, is tied also to your character. So in the Bible, it talks about like somebody who's chronically late or gossiping, that would be a slackard, and that they actually get punished by God is what Proverbs explains. So I look at it as like, to me, it's like a moral faux pas and a work one. But for you, if you're agnostic or you're somebody who has different religious views out there, you might not be able to weave those two together as a 2-for-1 special. You might go, they're a good person, but I'm going to have to let them go because they're a bad employee. You know what I mean? Just kind of resolving that.
So I have one more thing I want to say on edge. It's not always like an ominous thing that you have to be able to do if you have edge. What I see a lot of times with entrepreneurs that we work with is maybe they have this new system that they know that we're teaching them. They know it works. They've seen the testimonials. They've seen it work for our companies. Let's talk about hiring for a second. But they just don't want to implement it. I would say you have to have the edge to actually make that business decision as well, right? You actually have to jump in and actually do something instead of have that paralysis by analysis and wait for every system to be perfect before you start it.
Yeah, once you have the facts, you absolutely have to act. Now, when we come back on our next segment, our next podcast, we're going to be answering the question from a Thrivers. What is the most upsetting thing that you have seen an unexperienced entrepreneur do? What is the most upsetting thing that you've seen an unexperienced entrepreneur do? And I'm going to change the question slightly to say, what is the most upsetting thing that I've seen an entrepreneur do? Because I see this with unexperienced entrepreneurs as well as experienced entrepreneurs. And when we come back, we will break those down. Thank you for listening to the Thrivetime Show podcast. We always want to end this show with a boom if possible. So without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!